If ever your life could be a true crime podcast episode, then this podcast is for you. We're about to embark on a roller coaster of emotions, insights, survival, and stories about escape. So buckle up and let the journey begin.
Good day, everybody. Welcome into the Escape Pod. I'm Julie.
I'm Charity.
And we have a special guest today.
Yes, we do. The capital THE very first female state's attorney for the state of South Dakota, Pennington County, Lara.
Well, that's a fun fact I didn't know.
Oh, come on. This is South Dakota. Seriously, you
Well, I
didn't know?
should have known, but I didn't
2024, we finally get the first female. I mean,
Yes.
yeah.
Lara, welcome into the Escape Pod.
Well worth the wait.
Thank you,
Well worth the wait.
ladies. I'm so excited to be here. I'm a super fan
Thank
of
you.
the Escape Pod. Thrilled
really is.
to be here.
Yeah.
Every single episode. And,
Yeah, she said she's all caught up.
and also in the corner, lurking like a creepy stalker, is the renowned cellist named Alec Doyle, who wrote our theme music. He's home for the week, and
Yes.
I decided to invite him in just to kind of hang out and see what we do. But
It's so good. It sticks in my head. He
Yeah.
doesn't have a microphone. He can't
Even-
respond, but I do love it.
even when I'm listening to episodes before you've tied the music in, I hear it.
Yes.
Like it's just, so you're in our heads, Alec. Thank you very much.
It's fantastic.
He's so handsome. He's
Isn't
such
he?
a perfect mix of you and your husband.
Yeah.
I'm glad I got to meet him. What a special bonus to, number one, to be here and to be here while your son is here as well. What a treat.
It is a treat. He's a sweetheart.
We've never had this many people in the pod together at one time.
No.
I don't think so.
Nope.
Not while recording.
It's cozy.
It's
It
cozy.
is.
Do you like it, though?
I like it so much. I'm so excited to
So,
be
hey,
here.
your office is close to my office. So if ever you need just to like come hide, I've offered this to people. This is a great dark place to just come and hide. No one will know where you're at.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I might take you up on that.
Okay.
Well, and the walls are padded for audio purposes, not for other reasons. But we feel
that's
like
not
you
true.
could use it for,
With the year we've had, we've used it for multiple purposes.
when
Yeah.
you need to bounce off the wall and not hurt yourself. So feel
Head
free
banging,
to escape here.
different definition than the 80s, but yeah.
Yeah, for sure. All right. So Lara is a super fan. She knows the formula we kind of go through each week as far as our escapism chats. What are you escaping from this week? I'll start with Charity since you
Start
are the
with me?
regular.
Okay, I have two things, I think. One happened today. I was driving to get my car serviced, and this idiot with construction supplies, so like PVC and all kinds of things in the bed of his truck with the tailgate down,
Oh, no.
takes off. All this PVC goes flying. He's clueless. Do, makes the turn and just goes on his merry way. Meanwhile, all these other cars are playing Frogger, and it was ridiculous. I'm like,
Wow.
lift your
So
tailgate.
dangerous.
Super dangerous.
Is there not a sensor to tell you the tailgate is down? Was it an old truck? I feel like that would
You know,
be
I was too
something that
busy
would
watching
ding
the
at
pipes
you.
fly across the street to look at really. I
Playing
know I can
Frogger.
tell you the truck was white and it was driven by a man, but that's all I can tell you.
There are several crimes I could identify in
Yes.
that interaction.
Yes. And he just left it. So anyway.
Well, and potentially road rage if she got to get in touch with him.
Well,
after
I'm
the
just
fact.
picturing, I mean, you know, my morbid sense of imagination. And I was just picturing like a Stephen King movie where one could, like it flies through the windshield and goes through someone's head, you know, in the next car. But that didn't happen. They hit the street before they hit anybody else.
Okay.
So escaping those dumbasses. And then, just exhaustion. I feel really good today. But this whole week, Monday, I could have sworn that it was Friday. Friday. Normally it's Tuesday or Wednesday on a Monday. This was a Friday on a Monday. And I'm just like, I'm not going to make it. I'm not going to make it. And
Not a
I
good
go
sign.
home. You know, I've got my son home and he wants to do stuff. And I'm just like, I'm just going to go unconscious. Thank you. I mean, just passing out and sleeping. But today, you know, like 4 o'clock in the morning, woke up finally feeling rested and refreshed. And
Did you know it was Thursday?
I did know it was Thursday. It's been Thursday all day.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Progress.
So escaping exhaustion. But I will say a hooray from this week. You know, little shout out to the work we do here at One Heart. We had one of our guests return after graduating She's been out in the community for a few months now, I think. Return. I didn't see the note until after she'd already left, but I hear that she's going to be a co-owner of her own company. Like she and another guy have gone in on a cleaning company.
Wow.
She owns her own home. She's sober. She's like not on government benefits. Like she is just the ideal graduate. And it just brought tears to my eyes. Like we did that. Like that's so amazing. And I'm so proud of her and so proud of us for sticking. So like the exhaustion doesn't come from that. It comes from how the hell to fund this thing so we can keep doing that. That's really where it comes from. So,
Yeah.
But
Yes,
anyway.
it does. Lara, what are you escaping?
Well, two quick observations. One, just the work that you are doing here at One Heart is changing lives. I cannot say enough how much you matter to this community.
Thank you.
Two, I have not been awake past 8 o'clock once this week. So something in the universe,
Amen, sister.
something in the universe is affecting us.
Yeah.
I am escaping from my calendar. As the state's attorney, I don't think people understand like the workload that's involved in that. I get on average over 200 emails a day. I'm scheduled for between 6 and 10 meetings a day.
Yeah.
So then any work I have to do is done on the nights and the weekends. So escaping my calendar and really excited that you were on it. So I actually am escaping from my work to the escape.
Awesome.
I love
We're
it.
happy to help.
How many hours a week, really, do you think you do on average?
Never less than 60, usually about 65 or 70 hours, yeah.
Oh, my gosh. I have a headache just thinking about that.
I love my job. We have a lot of crime in Pennington County. We
Yeah.
just do.
Yeah.
We do. We have a lot of crime.
So on the one hand, it's job security.
It is. It's
for
a
you
lot.
and your team. But what I really like about your approach since you've taken over is looking at staffing levels, looking at what's realistic. I mean, the people in your office have been burned out for a very, very, very long time. One of my best friends actually used to work in that office, and it's just been crazy. And you're assessing and bringing it back to reality. Of course, funding comes along with that, and that's a whole different conversation. But it's really important that you're actually doing that and thinking strategically because what is happening in our community versus what was happening in your office, they don't match and it's not sustainable.
I think it's one of the blessings of COVID. People aren't willing to work themselves to death anymore. They're looking for jobs that have a realistic work-life balance. I hate that term. I can't believe I just said it. I hate it. It doesn't exist. It's a lie.
exist, yeah.
It's a lie. But people really are not willing to work themselves to death anymore. I mean, I'm the exception. And so as supervisors and administrators and leaders, you and I have to be really cognizant of the fact that we have to be realistic about the work that people can be expected to do.
They're not wired that way. And I've said that too to our staff.
Nor
at all
should they
staff
be.
meetings. Right. Like, yeah, that work ethic. I know who on my team has that work ethic. And I know who shows up for their 40 hours, does their best, and that's all I'm going to get out of them. And that's okay. As long as they're reliable and they support our mission, I'm good with that.
Right.
So
As well you should be.
There's a comedian who I just saw a little clip where it's a woman and she's talking about she doesn't have kids. And she says, well, people say women can do it all these days. And she's like, that sounds terrible. Like you're telling them go work 40 hours a week, plus do all the things for your family, plus do this, plus do that. And that's something I'm supposed to want to do. Like that's crazy. Why are we telling people that? So that leads to my escape this week, which is that I have successfully escaped my children. They're on vacation without me, visiting family on the other side of the country, and it's okay. I am going to join them next week, but I couldn't be gone the entire time, and so this was my compromise. I said to my husband, either I go for part of it or I can't go at all. And what do you think about that? And he drives, and it's a long drive, so I'm happy that I can drive back with him. That makes me feel better because I do always, even though he's a very good driver and he's very careful and he would never in a million years put our kids' lives in jeopardy, driving too late, too long,
exhausting.
whatever. He wouldn't do that. But I still feel better when I'm with him.
Yeah.
Like if we're going down, I hope we all go down together. Like, let's put it that way.
Wow.
No,
That went dark.
Totally kidding. But I feel like, I was glad at least I can ride back with him and do the really long drive back, which I'm not really looking forward to, but in some ways I kind of am.
1,400 miles or?
It probably is right about there. Yeah.
Don't ask me why I think that number. I could be.
It's a lot. I think it might actually be more than that. It's closer to 15, I think. But yeah, it's a doozy. It's a doozy. And South Dakota and Wyoming, Jeremy and I have decided, like, once you go through those states, it seems like it goes pretty fast.
Everything else is,
It's like those are really wide states.
If you can survive those, you can survive driving through anywhere.
You can get through most places. So, and I think Iowa wouldn't be as bad, but their speed limit isn't as high. And so you kind of, like, all of a sudden you feel like you're kind of plugging along. And anyway, it's fine. We would never dream of breaking the law and speeding, Lara, just so you know. Not in a million years. Okay, moving right along. So
I speed all the time.
I can never speed because I would never want to put an officer or a deputy in the position of pulling me over, which has happened. But I hate it when it does because they have to give me a ticket.
I have this one stretch, and even the cops that live in my neighborhood see me do it, and they're like, but they're doing it too. But the thing is like it was 45 miles an hour for years. Is that where you got pulled over?
So hard.
Okay, but it was 45 miles an hour, and then as it started to develop, they changed it down to 35.
Yes.
And it's like, first, with no fanfare, they need an orange sign. They need something to get your attention. And then I'm like, what's going on? Oh, crap. And then when it was 45, everybody would crawl on it, except me. I'd go the speed limit. And now that it's 35, everybody's speeding. And I'm just like, I don't understand our
Or if a
psyche here.
stoplight or stop sign shows up someplace where there wasn't before, and you get, I've gone halfway through an intersection before and been like,
what's that? Yeah.
Like, where did that come from? So it happens.
Change is hard.
Yeah.
Change is hard.
Yeah, we are creatures of habit, that's for sure.
Also, I want to say real quick, another hooray. I think I figured out what happened, but last week, since Friday, so almost a week now, we have had insane numbers of downloads, which is super exciting. I was hoping it was because of our efforts.
Well, some of it is.
Well, it turned out because the episode we recorded on my husband's shooting 13 years ago, he promoted that on this recent anniversary. And so that bolted to the top of the download list. And I think that's where they're coming from. So I'm like, thank you, Tim. And how do we recreate that? But hopefully we'll gain some new listeners through that. But it was just crazy. Cara Beth and I are watching it going, oh my gosh, where's this coming from? But it's super exciting.
It was actually one of my favorite episodes to be a part of just because, as I said then and will say today, so it's called True Crime Hits Too Close. And I knew obviously a lot about the events of the day, and now I've worked with charity several years, so I knew additional events about the day. But to talk to both of you together, and there were definitely insights that I just was surprised to hear, and things that we got to dig into a little bit that I was like, this is really cool to like hear the full, story. And the fact that he says, I didn't ever really have PTSD. Okay, why is that? And he's like, well, actually, I talked to a psychologist about this not that long ago. And that whole part of the conversation was just so enlightening for me. And I felt like I just learned a ton.
Well, and I think that's going to be a good segue into some of what we're going to talk about today and talking about trauma. It's also my favorite episode. And I've talked to both Charity and Tim together about that day. I experienced that day myself through my own lens, which was, of course, very different from theirs. And it's really, really powerful. I think it's an episode that everyone should listen to. It's a historical event for Rapid City. It's also a really interesting event if you're interested in learning about trauma.
Yeah.
To hear it from Charity's perspective and also from Tim's, and then to hear about how it affected them moving forward, very differently for each of them moving forward. Powerful, really powerful episode.
Yeah.
I also learned something about that event recently on the recent anniversary. So last week, I won't name the media, local media that put it out, but it was a traffic stop and it was someone in the car that came out shooting. And I'm like,
Oh, they just didn't.
13 years later, and you guys completely butchered it. So I went home and said, hey, Tim, I didn't realize that was a traffic stop. He's like, what? I said, you got to read this. Every detail was wrong. They misspelled the chief's name. Like, everything was wrong. I was like, nice job. Again, I won't name which media outlet that was, but.
Well, it's disrespectful.
It was very, very bad journalism, yes.
Well, and it's not like there's not a gazillion archived stories about the day that would have set things straight.
Yeah.
So there's that. Okay, so I said I could just ask Lara a whole bunch of questions. I saw her work in the courtroom many, many times. She's amazing. I'm not just saying that because she's sitting here. I've said that to other people, not in your presence. It really is
badass. It's fun to.
Yeah, she's impressive. But you do have a topic that you wanted to address because some changes have happened more recently.
Yeah. So we were at a social event together, and we were talking about the podcast, and we hadn't seen each other for a while. We try to get together fairly regularly, and she's like, "But I feel like I talk to you every week because of the podcast." And then she mentioned how historically freezing, when we talk about fight, flight, freeze, appease, freezing wasn't recognized by our court system, as a trauma response. And when I think back to even some of the stories we've done or some of the stories I've listened to, when, especially with sexual assault victims, and it's like, well, she didn't say no, she didn't fight, she must have been consenting, bullshit, all of that kind of a thing. And so she was involved in getting that changed. And it just really stuck with me. And I thought that would be escaping like caveman days. This would be a really good topic for the pod.
Yeah.
So
tell us how that came about and what the law looks like now.
Yeah, I would love to, because I don't think it's been really well publicized, this major change in South Dakota
I didn't
law.
know about it.
And, Julie, when you're talking about my historical work, my passion has always been sexual assault and advocacy in general for people who have been disenfranchised, victims who can't advocate for themselves, domestic violence. And we know that South Dakota has just fallen so far behind in sexual assault advocacy.
Okay.
And sexual assault just remains such a huge problem in South Dakota. We just had the Department of Health just release data that South Dakota remains number 10 in the United States for the highest rate of sexual assault. And it's
with our population?
And it even is a lot worse than it sounds, because when you look at the rankings, the number disparity between 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 is very, very small. So we're right in there, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. The year before, we were number 3 in the nation for the highest sexual assault rates. And interestingly, the Department of Health grouped Pennington County and called it a metropolitan area. And in comparing us to other metropolitan areas, so think New York City, Minneapolis, like we're talking Los Angeles, comparing Pennington County to other metropolitan areas, and I'm putting that in air quotes for the people that are listening, we're number 7 in the nation. Pennington County is number 7 in the nation for the highest sexual assault rates. So I mean, it's an epidemic. The number of people that are affected by sexual assault.
So is it hard numbers, like unique individuals, or is it like per capita, or what kind of metric are they basing that on?
Yeah, they're doing it per 100,000 people is the ratio that they're using. And we know that that's just people that are reporting.
Right.
And so many sexual assault victims don't report. And I would just challenge you to take a minute to think whether, if you were a sexual assault victim tonight, whether you would report. Okay.
Right.
Yeah.
Would you report? So in my experience as a prosecutor, there were many, many cases that I couldn't prosecute because when the victim would report to law enforcement their experience, they would talk about how during the assault they would freeze. And what we've learned through science about trauma response, and we just talked about Tim's trauma experience, and what we know about trauma experiences is they're so unique to each individual, and the aftermath of trauma is so unique to each individual. And, we've heard Charity talk about, in a lot of the prior episodes about how you just don't necessarily think that you don't necessarily react the way you would anticipate that you're going to react in a
Correct.
traumatic experience. Charity's talked about that quite a bit already, and it's very, very true. But one of the most common reactions in a sexual assault is to freeze. And what science has shown is that in the animal kingdom, that's one of the best ways to survive.
Yep.
It's just one of the absolute best ways to survive. And it's documented scientifically through the animal kingdom. One of the most entertaining examples of it is if you Google sharks. Sharks freeze when they're under attack. You can do a Google search for sharks freezing. Encourage you all at home to do it right now. It's just really kind of entertaining the way that they do it, and it's a way that they can survive attack by larger animals. It's well documented in the animal kingdom as a survival technique, but the law didn't recognize that. And South Dakota is historically behind the times in our laws. It just takes our legislators a while historically, with all due respect to the legislators that are listening to this, a while to catch up. And so we didn't have anything in our law that recognized that. You had to say no. There had to be physical force used against you, or you had to be actively expressing a lack of consent. And the law required documentation or proof of force, injury, exertion of hands-on force on an individual to execute the sex act.
Some sign you're trying to fight back.
Yeah, you had to fight back. There had to be force or threat of physical, imminent bodily harm against the victim.
How did you not pull all of your hair out trying to prosecute these cases?
It was heartbreaking, Charity. It really was heartbreaking to have to tell a sexual assault victim because your trauma response, which you can't control, you
Right.
can't.
It's hardwired. You don't get a choice.
You do not get a choice. And so many victims afterwards talk about how I wish I had fought. And they, it requires a lot of therapy or, mental work to process through, because oftentimes they're disappointed in their trauma response and they
Yes.
don't understand that they didn't get to pick, right?
Can relate.
So to have to tell a victim, because your trauma response was to freeze and it worked, you survived that sexual assault, I can't prosecute your crime because the law in South Dakota requires force or threat of imminent serious bodily injury for me to charge your
So to
crime.
put this in reality, when I think about back to, the episode we did about the last time my dad assaulted me, and I put my finger up, I said, wait, I told you the last time you did it, you do it, I'm going to turn you in. I'm thinking about someone who's getting ready to be assaulted. Wait, here's my checklist. No, I'm telling you no. And wait, I've got to put my hands on you and fight. And are you freaking kidding me? That is so primitive.
Right.
My blood pressure's going up really high right now.
Yeah, and it was really, really difficult to have to express to victims that the law did not recognize their rape as rape.
Powerless. They absolutely feel minimized and powerless.
Yeah. Yeah. So in 2023, we were able to, so there's a wonderful senator named Senator Reed. He's from East River. He's an amazing man. He's been recognized with several awards for his work in this area. He helped us move forward a bill that brought its sexual penetration without consent in 2023 into our rape laws. And I was a proponent of that. I testified at legislature in both the House and the Senate, and we were able to put on the books sexual penetration without consent as a variant of rape, which recognizes, and the Senate and the representatives heard testimony about the trauma response freeze and how many of our victims were experiencing that trauma response and not being able to move forward their cases as a result. So it was a major victory for us in 2023. And now those cases can move forward in South Dakota, which is a huge win.
Well, obviously they voted for it, but did you feel like there were people you were speaking to that this was news to them?
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. And there was a lot of resistance because there was a lot of questioning from the the senators and representatives about, well, how would the perpetrator know then that the sex was not consensual?
Are you kidding me?
If it was not expressed, if no was not expressed, and if the person was not fighting back, if they were just laying there, for example, then how would they know that it was not consensual?
What if the person's mouth was duct taped?
Right.
And they couldn't say no?
So it is part of the law that it's sexual penetration without consent
Also created by men back in the day.
when it is known to the perpetrator that they are not consenting. So it is a little more difficult than I initially made it sound. It has to be somehow I have to prove to the jury that the perpetrator knew that the person was not consenting. So I will have to convince a jury that
Burden of proof is on the victim.
on the victim and me as the
Prosecutor.
prosecutor to
Isn't
prove.
usually the okay.
Yeah, so I have to prove beyond a reasonable doubt that the perpetrator knew that that victim was not consenting.
Well, and it's always on the prosecution.
Yep, it's on me.
It's, defense doesn't, I mean, yeah, it's always on you to determine
Right.
or to help them understand you have the proof to.
Yeah.
So
and
what kind of tactics? Because you can't prove easily what someone's intent is intangible. Like how do you do that?
Right. So I think the way that I will do that is, and the way that we will do that as prosecutors is to put that victim on to talk about what they were experiencing in that moment and have them articulate that they could not move and articulate that freeze response. And then we're going to have to bring in an expert on trauma response to really help jurors understand that it's not just fight or flight. It's not just fight or flight. It's fight, flight, or freeze. And oh, by the way, there's another one
Appease.
that's called Fawn
Yeah.
or appease. And I mean, we're nowhere close to getting people to understand Fawn or appease yet. We're getting there. And the expert that I use in this regard does talk about that. So I think with an expert and with a victim that can really articulate what they were experiencing, we can hopefully convince jurors. And I think just talking in situations like this to people like you who have the power of a forum like you do with as many listeners as you have, to get the everyday citizen to understand that the freeze response is real. Because the people that are listening to the show right now are jurors and prospective jurors. And when they come into a case and they hear about it in the future, this won't be the first time that they've heard it.
And the punishment, how does that compare to what I would call a more traditional rape charge?
It's the same.
It's the same. Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Have you had, or has your department had the opportunity to prosecute under the new laws, and have you seen a change?
Yes. So it just took effect July of 2023. So we're just hitting a year now, but we have charged that. I don't think we've had any come to trial yet, but we have charged under that new statute.
How's the backlog since COVID? Because I know there was quite the backlog. Is that starting to clear up, or?
Yes, finally, we are kind of catching up with our COVID backlog. Our courts stayed open, but we still had a lot of congestion from COVID. Things just didn't move the way that they would have otherwise, especially our high-level murder and rape cases really had a lot of backlog and congestion. So, for example, I still have 21 cases on I call it my murder board, open homicide cases in my office, which is a lot for a county the size of ours to have open.
Wow.
Yeah, it's a lot.
Wow. What is the highest number of type of cases that you have right now that you see?
So it's going to be drug cases.
Okay.
There's a lot of methamphetamine in our community. It's still the drug of choice, which is obviously incredibly concerning, but the one that keeps me up at night is the fentanyl. I mean, the amount of fentanyl that's coming into our community is shocking, and the most concerning thing about that drug is the toxicity of it. I mean, so many people are overdosing on that drug. And our first responders, our firefighters, our EMTs, and of course our law enforcement, the amount of Narcan and drugs that they're using to save these overdose victims it is shocking. I read about it in our pass along several times a week, people overdosing on fentanyl.
Well, that's the thing too, is you have people who want or need this level of high, it's one thing to harm yourself doing that. It's another thing when you are exposing first responders to the risk of even death by their exposure to that drug as they're trying to save you. And there are stories about that, first responder gets dosed essentially, even just airborne, breathing in this stuff, and has seizures and all kinds of things. And it's terrifying.
Yeah, it
Being
is.
married to a first responder, as Julie and I are.
Same.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can attest to that. I was really surprised a few years ago when my husband, and of course he can't give away much and he wouldn't, but he just saying twice in a week, being with a paramedic who had to give a shot of Narcan. And it was in a really short amount of time. And he's just like, he just shakes his head. It's not as surprising to them because they're, it's just slowly become something that happens more and more and more. But I think for the general population, people have no idea. They have no idea how prevalent.
Yeah, we actually had to start here. We've done random UAs or UAs under suspicion. People have to do UAs before they enroll here, so we're kind of seeing are your words aligning with your urine? You tell us you're sober. Are you actually? We actually had a prospective, so a candidate come in, and this is so funny, and they're like, "Well, yeah, I'll do the UA, but." And somehow they knew because people talk, right? They talk in this arena. They wanted the old UA cups that didn't test for fentanyl. We're like, we're going to unwrap one of these ones that actually test for fentanyl. So how's that going to work?
Yeah.
Obviously, it didn't work.
So I have a question for you that I've pondered since I knew you were coming on. We talk so much about trauma here, and obviously a lot of perpetrators of crime have been victims themselves. How often when you're doing your job do you feel for the perpetrator?
It's funny that you say that because I just had a conversation today with one of my prosecutors about that very subject. So we were talking about how both of us wanted to write a book because there's so much that happens in our jobs that we could write a book, right? And she asked me if I liked Jodi Picoult. And I said yes. And I said, have you read Mad Honey? And I said yes, which is all about a person accused of a crime. And we both liked it because it really helps us connect to an offender's perspective. And then we started talking about another book that's called Defending Jacob, which is also a TV show. And we like it for the same reason, that it really gives you empathy for an accused person. And I think it's very important for the community to understand that as prosecutors, we are responsible first and foremost for representing the people of the state of South Dakota. I represent the community of Pennington County, but I am just as responsible in a case for representing the victim and the defendant equally. And when I train new prosecutors, I always put my hands in the shape of a triangle, and I say up on top is the people of Pennington County. First and foremost, I'm responsible for keeping my community safe. But on the bottom tier of that triangle, my victim's on the left and the defendant's on the right. And I have to think of the interests of both of them equally. And I think that surprises some people that I would say that. But they're both part of the community and the people of Pennington County. And so the answer to your question is more often than you would think, and in every single case, because ultimately my goal is to make sure that that person who's committed a crime doesn't commit any more crimes and can become a thriving member of our community.
Right.
And that's why I'm so grateful for Charity and for you and the people and the people that are doing the good work here at One Heart, because this is how you successfully reintegrate people back into the community. And there are a lot of people that I know that have come through the criminal justice system that end up coming through here and come out completely successfully. There's one of them that I know him and he doesn't really know how I know him, who's a waiter at a restaurant that I go to quite a bit. And I call him by first name, and I know he's like, how does she know my first name? Because I know his history and cheer for him and the tremendous success that he exhibits. And so I'm cheering for those defendants. I want them to succeed and
I know who
be
you're
thriving.
talking about. And
He's so great.
Great.
And be thriving members of our community.
Yeah. And what percentage do you think of perpetrators of crimes, of those defendants, have been victims? Can you guess? Or is there statistics
I'm sure
even for a general population of defendants?
I'm sure there are statistics, but what we know about ACEs, adverse child experiences, and their correlation to criminal behavior, I mean, it has to be in the 80%.
Yeah.
I mean, we know that the negative things that are happening to children, the correlation to lack of education and poverty, and the victimization that is happening with young people. I mean, it's
Ripple effect.
It's just a terrible ripple effect. And that's why it's imperative that we stop cycles whenever we can.
Yes.
For sure.
Well, very well said.
On that note, shall we take a quick break?
Sure.
We'll take a quick break. We'll let Lara breathe. If you need to bounce around the escape pod a little bit, go ahead.
I'll bounce.
We'll be right back. At One Heart, transforming lives begins with safe, stable housing and a support system that allows people to reach their true potential. It requires motivation, mentorship, and a myriad of services. It takes time and treasure, but it's worth it because it's working. One Heart provides people with a sense of security, opportunities for economic advancement, and adds dozens to the workforce each year. Learn more about why One Heart works at oneheartrc.org.
3,
Wrap it up.
2, 1.
You get the biggest kick out of my countdown.
I do. You're so good at it.
We are back in the Escape Pod. I'm Julie here with Charity and our special guest in the pod today, Lara Retzel, Pennington County State's Attorney. I mentioned how good she is in the courtroom. Also, when I was a reporter, she would often call me back. And I have to tell you, that put you toward the top of my list of favorite people to have to work with because of the fact that so often people do not, especially lawyers, don't love calling back reporters. And I take great pride in the fact that I had defense attorneys who would return my calls too. So that's a big deal, right?
Absolutely.
I should be proud of that.
You should be very proud.
You were an actual journalist.
Well, I was trying to be fair.
You know,
as
you
fair as
did.
you
You were
can.
fair. You were impartial. You were respectful.
Sometimes it is hard to be fair because you can't always get people to call you back and you can't always get every potential side of a story. So sometimes it is challenging. And I do think journalists have tough jobs, but you have to try. You got to make the effort. And so anyway, so thank you for all those return phone calls. I appreciate you. What are we escaping to, ladies? Who wants to go
Lara
first?
I have 5 children and 1 grandchild.
Oh, wow.
And every Sunday we have family dinner at my house.
Okay.
And for birthdays, we have a theme. And so this Sunday is my daughter-in-law's birthday. She is turning 30.
Okay.
And so
Is
we're
this the new mama?
yes, she is the mother of my first grandchild. We're having a luau.
Nice.
So I am escaping to Sunday dinner with a luau theme with all of my children, well, the ones that live in Rapid City.
Yeah.
And a luau theme. So maybe my grandbaby will be wearing a grass skirt. Yeah, so yeah.
Sunglasses.
Yeah, my escape is definitely my family. They keep me grounded and as sane as you see me today.
That's awesome. I will just piggyback off yours because we have family coming into town and my own family left town, so I don't have them. But I have a sibling coming in with her family, and so I'll get to hang out with them this weekend. That will definitely be my escape. She might be embarrassed that I'm sharing this, but my sister is the middle child in our family. And the other night I was talking to my mom on the phone and we were like 2 minutes into the conversation and she goes, "Oh, your sister's calling. I'll call you back." And she dropped my call like a hot potato. And I told my sister, I sent her a text almost immediately, "I don't want to hear your middle child issues anymore." Like our mom just dropped my call for yours like it was nothing. And my sister's just like, "Oh, geez," like we have a wonderful relationship. And my mom, thankfully, she laughed about it because every once in a while she gets like serious mom mode where she's like, "You don't really like, you don't really feel that way, do you? I'm like, Mom, I'm giving you a hard time. Like, she's amazing. It's all good. But where's your escape to this week, Charity?
Well, Alex's home, and it's not 107 degrees this weekend, so we're probably going to go hike. Yeah.
Oh, and it'll be quieter. We're starting to see the downside, the back end of the rally, the motorcycle rally in Sturgis. So it should be a little bit quieter out there for you.
Yeah. So I don't know where yet, but he'll get to pick and we'll go hike.
All right. Well, that's going to do it for this episode of the Escape Pod. Lara, will you please come back?
Anytime. Thanks for having me.
I think this should be a regular spot.
I mean, I'm up
think
for
it should be a regular spot,
Per
yes.
calendar, probably. How far out do we have to schedule?
Oh, about a month, probably.
Okay. That's doable.
All right.
That's not that far.
Sign me up.
All right, Charity,
Okay.
do you want to tell people how they can help us, where they can listen to us, and how they can
I realized today,
make a
yes, I will.
difference?
I haven't plugged enough the patron program.
Yeah,
we
I had somebody just ask about
Yeah,
the
we
patron.
talked about it in the early days, and I'm kind of assuming people go to our website and they don't. Like, they'll go straight to Spotify, straight to,
True.
Apple or whatever. So we do have a patron program. You can access that through our website at escapepod.live. And it's like $2 or $5 or $10 a month. And just so you know, those do not go to Charity and Julie's paychecks. They go to support the guests at One Heart. So this is a podcast for a cause. But you can also go to the website or Spotify or wherever you listen to podcasts. You can rate, view, and subscribe. A 5-star rating actually helps raise our standing so other people can find us. I've lost track about how many countries, but we'll have, several people in different countries. I'd love to grow that even more and become a true international podcast. That'd be really fun. You can reach out to us at escapepod.live. Let us know what you're thinking about an episode or a topic idea or anything like that. Or if you, like me, have escaped 1,000 things or one really important thing, you can send that story to us at escapeartist@escapepod.live, and we just might share it on a future episode.
We are closing the hatch on this episode of the Escape Pod. Remember, trauma may be inevitable. How you grapple with it is optional.
So stay resilient.
And keep laughing.
Thanks, everybody, and thanks, Lara.